Imagine having one moment that changed the entire trajectory of your life. Many of you have probably experienced something like this: the loss of a loved one, a sudden illness, or a tragic accident. In this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast, our guest Chad Porter has found a way to take a horrific event and use his experience as a platform to empower others. If you ever feel stuck or feel like there's no hope ahead, I highly recommend listening to Chad's story. He shares with us the power of communication to inspire, and to quote Chad, how some of your greatest blessings in life will be in those moments that seemed at the time to be your darkest. Thanks for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.
This is the Truth Be Told podcast, where we unlock the secrets of strategic communication.
Inspirational and motivational, Chad Porter is one of the nation's most highly recommended speakers and coaches. Corporate CEOs, fundraising executives, Major League Baseball, National Football League, college athletes, and coaches alike praise his powerful account of overcoming obstacles, perseverance, and dealing with life's challenges. Chad was the lead motivational speaker on the former elite Zig Ziglar International team. Hundreds of thousands have benefited by his uplifting message for over 20 years. His book, Severed Dreams, captured national bestseller status in just a few days after release. And head coach of the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott, describes Chad as extremely inspirational and one of the best speakers they've ever had. Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I'm your host, Dave Thompson. I am here with guest Chad Porter. Thanks for giving me some of your time today, Chad.
Man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me that you reach out to me.
Well, I'm excited for you to continue to share your message. I got to listen to Chad speak, I don't know, a few months ago now at a conference, and was just so touched by it. Was so inspirational and motivational and emotional, and I can think of all the other ill words to add into there, but I thought of how much your story really connects with our guest, and we'll get into that. I wrote down a few quotes from some things you've said before, so I didn't give Chad any of these yet, so he has no idea what's coming at him. But this one, I just thought I wanted to kind of kick off with it. You've got something that says, "You are not a failure until you quit. Free will offers us a choice." So before we even get into your experience, what does that mean to you or to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what your faith is. I think to know that we have the ability to make our own choices every single day. I mean, we have that ability every single day to wake up and choose right, choose wrong. We're not forced to pick the right way. We're not forced to choose the correct thing to say or to do. We have free will, and that can be very dangerous and very empowering all at the same time. It's what we choose, though. We choose to be happy. We choose to not let people bother us if we choose not to, and no one can affect us if we choose not to. And so having choices every single day to change who you are, to become a better person, to go in the opposite direction, it's us all choices. There's very few things we can control in this world, but choices are one of those things that we have. So
I jotted that one down because what you just said, I think, seems easy when life is going your way, right? It's easy to think, okay, I've got a good job, I got good money, I'm in a happy relationship. I can make whatever choice I want. It's when shit hits the fan that trying to remember you still have a choice is difficult. And that's why I think, obviously your life experience and what you speak about today is just so much more powerful than just hearing that at its surface. So I want to bring our listeners kind of back to the beginning. And let's talk about your star athlete days back as a young teenager first. So you're football and basketball and everything else in between?
I did, man. I grew up just loving being outside. My dad was a three-lettered athlete in college, played 3 different sports, came back, was a coach. I was a little kid running around just trying to be like him every single day and his athletes. And so sports was everything, man. I played whatever was available. And in my little small town, there wasn't but baseball, basketball, and football, I think. I think soccer came around a little later, but too late for me. It's too much running for no reason, it felt like to me. But yeah, I loved football, loved basketball, excelled at both. And, things were going great for me. I mean, there was no question that I was going to probably play college football. I had every, tool and everything going well for me. And so, yeah, I mean, it was my whole life was just being active, being in around sports, and it was just everything for me.
Now, before we sidetrack into how your life sidetracked, when you mentioned football, I should mention to everybody that you did speak in front of my Buffalo Bills a few years
Yeah,
ago.
I did. Yeah.
And so
It's no secret that they've had so much success since 2018 when I spoke to them. But I'll also say that was Josh Allen's rookie season, so I can't probably take all the credit.
it's a correlation. Sure.
Sure. It's all
So
together.
there's Super Bowl rings to be passed around. I'm sure you'll be remembered in the.
That's an incredible organization for sure. You should
Yeah.
be proud to be a fan for sure.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to talk more about that too as we get to the way that you've communicated to so many different diverse audiences, including the Clemson Tiger. I mean, just really, really cool businesses and everything else. But let's go back. So you've got this life that I think a lot of listeners can probably relate to of, maybe in their young teens and like everything mid-teens, everything feels good, right? You got athletic ability and you're blessed to have that, which means with that usually comes a good social life. You feel included. I know when you spoke, you had really a good group of, friends that were having a good time on weekends and living by a lake and doing all this kind of fun stuff. And so I think a lot of people can relate to what life was like at that time. What were some of the other activities that I know obviously got into the story that we're going to dive into further?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was just so blessed, but both my parents were amazing, amazing supportive people. Both of them being teachers and coach. My dad would coach and was a principal eventually, but we had our summers somewhat off. And so we would move to White Lake. And so I started growing up around the lake, water skiing and doing all those things since I was about 4 years old, and joined a type of professional water ski team around our lake that you literally grew up as a child watching these skiers jump the ramp and do these barefooting and pyramid building and all these cypress gardens type of things. As a kid, you just watch them and you think, God, if I could ever be on that show. And so that kind of happened as I got into my teen years and joined with the White Lake Ski Hills. And so it was just Americana at its finest, man. Just being able to spend your summers on the water with your buddies. And yeah, we worked too and made money and things on the side. But you're right. I think, your teen years are so magical. Yes, there's struggles. There's so many things that kids are dealing with today. I can't even imagine really going through some of the things with social media and things. But yeah, the world is at your hands. Rarely do you have huge responsibilities. Sports comes, with hopefully a desire for wanting to do it and not a job and enjoying those things. But for me, it was my life, man. Just being active, being in sports. It was just all I wanted to do. And that's what I prepared my whole life to be. That was it.
Well, and trying to think about that time in my life too, you're not that you're planning 20 years ahead, right? You probably can't think about the next day, but if you could take yourself back to that time frame, what did you think you had planned for the future? What did your future look like at that time?
Oh, I was going to be Gronk before Gronk. I mean, there was no question, no doubt about it. Maybe a little bit less partying on that end of things, but as far as athletic ability and time, I mean, I know that Tiger Woods, I was thinking just a couple of months, actually less than a month older than I am, and Tom Brady, we're all kind of around that. I could have just been finishing up playing football. I'm not as crazy as Tom, but my whole plan was to go play college football, go play pro football after that. There was no question. I mean, I had everything. I mean, even starting to be looked at, as a very young player. And so things were, just heading my way. I was that coach's son mentality, and I had great grades, and I was an Eagle Scout, and I had done other things, but man, this is what I loved. And there was no reason that I could not take that further. And so that was my plan.
Yeah. And it's so crazy because again, at that time in life, I think even today, but you take so much for granted, right? You take for granted that you're waking up in a house with a bed and you got food on the table, and like, especially when you've got a family that's there and support system, you take that for granted, and athletic ability and just the positivity you can take for granted. And then that can all get maybe taken away from you so quickly. So you can bring us back to that day in your life that really kind of was your, I would say, pivot point to what brought us here today.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think every child in every situation growing up, you have what is your reality, and that's what it is. And whether that is a reality of you take for granted things because you pretty much have everything that you ever needed, or you grow up in a situation where that's not the case. You're the parent, or you're the adult, or you're having to do these things. But I was just very lucky that my parents allowed me to be a kid, but also made me responsible. I had to work and I had to get jobs. I had to do chores, and you never said no. That's just wasn't in the vocabulary. I don't know where that comes from today, where kids have that ability. But for me, like I said, my whole life planned out. I just finished my freshman year in high school. Things went amazingly. MVP of the football team, and things were just going great. And I actually scored every touchdown that entire season. We were the worst football team ever, but things were going well for me.
You got your stats, sure.
Yeah, just left and went to the lake and started our summer at the lake and had our first ski show of the summer, and it was just a blast and couldn't wait. And every sign in the world outside of excitement was, hey, maybe this isn't the best situation. There was a lot of things that happened, ahead of me actually going this day that you look back on and you go, wow, there was a lot of little signs that said, hey, don't go. But we went to this ski show that day, and, just a normal routine weekend and a day that we were doing it. And just one of those moments in life where something you never, ever could imagine happens, just comes out of nowhere and changes your life forever. And that's exactly what happened. We had just gotten through doing a huge pyramid, and everything was great. This huge storm had started coming up, and so we were really trying to hurry and get everything organized and get off the lake. And so we were in this big hurry and had all these big, powerful ski boats. And as all of us jumped out of the back of the boat, the two dads were cleaning up the boat, and something crazy happened. He literally the driver spun around, and something happened, threw the boat completely in reverse, and it just took off with nobody at the controls. And I was the only one directly behind the boat. And when it took back off, I just dove underwater thinking, I didn't even know what was happening, but I knew something wrong was going on. And so I dove down to the bottom of the lake thinking I'd get away, but in waist deep water, nowhere to hide. And I just got run right over by that boat and that steel propeller with 400 horsepower pushing it as fast as it could. And it just destroyed my body. It just chopped me up, and could not get away from it. The suction kept me right there and just kept hitting me until the boat finally ran into another boat. The two dads were able to get up and turn it off. But, it would never, ever, ever happen again in my life or anyone else that I ever know. But it was just one of those things that it happened, and had no fault to anyone, but it happened, and it changed life forever.
When you said there's a lot of maybe red flags that popped up or weird things that happened, I remember you telling a story about having to wrap your toe with some duct tape and all this other kind of craziness that day. But do you ever look back and try to does that cause your head to spin of think, well, if I would have saw this or this signal, maybe I shouldn't have went. What if? I guess, does the what if bother you still today?
So two of the funny, the signs that you don't think about till way after, months after, weeks after. But the first was, I ran around the house, kicked the coffee table, peeled my pinky toenail all the way back up off of my toe. We tried to get the pliers out with my dad to snatch it off, and I just couldn't have the stomach to do it. So I just wrapped it in duct tape, and we made it. But literally, I didn't think I was going to go because my tight rubber ski boots, sliding the foot, nail flapping, just not good. The other crazy thing that I wrote about in the book, and I don't even think I told you about, but the day before we were in Myrtle Beach with my family, and we were in the mall and just happened to be walking through, and there was a caricature artist drawing pictures. And I was like, oh, sure, I've never done that before. So he draws this picture. That's what I like to do. And I said, I love to water ski and this kind of thing. And so that's all I said. He drew this picture, showed me the picture, and that picture went into a closet. Nobody thought anything about it until months later. My mom was cleaning out after my accident that happened the very next day, and she was so afraid to show it to me. And finally she showed it to me, and I thought it was the most hilarious thing. But it was a picture of me water skiing with my big head, obviously, the caricature, and had a shark in the background pulling on my shorts. And at the top it said Chad's last ride. And that was the day before I got run over by that boat. So I will never, ever get a draw my picture ever again. I pass out all the time, and my friends are like, hey, you want to do it? I'm like, no. Unless they're going to tell me I'm making $1 million. That's right. The only going to do it. So
yeah, man, I got chilled. That had to be a traumatic I know you said it was hilarious, but I'm sure when your mom first saw that, it wasn't so
Oh
funny.
God, she was
Yeah.
so afraid to show it to me, and I was like, "This
Yeah.
is amazing." I actually posted it not too long ago on social media because I just found the picture. But yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, there are those signs, and there are those things, and I remember speaking when I first got back into speaking after originally doing it during high school, but I got back into speaking after college, and I had this kid in this elementary school raise his hand and said, "Hey, don't you wish you would have stayed home? Because your toenail was ripped off. You could have just stayed at the house. No one would have blamed you, and this would have never happened." And honestly, I'd never thought of it. Never thought of that. And this was decades after this had happened. And I said, had you asked me that a month or two after the accident, I was like, God, it was the worst decision I ever made. But I look back on it now saying it has created a life that I would never, ever could have imagined happening. And yes, I almost gave up in the hospital. I wanted to take my life. I thought about how to do it. Luckily, just could not. I was too disabled to get it done. But, we can look at things all the time and say, hey, shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have done that. But man, that's just what life is. And that's where you talked about free will came in. It's just our whole life is choices, and we make the best ones we can make. And they don't always pan out the way we want them to. And sometimes it sucks. Our decisions are horrible and we have massive regret, and wish we could redo them, but it's just not how this works. And so we just do our best, and we make our best decisions every single day. And that's all that we can live on. And we just have to keep moving forward. And yeah, that day turned out to be the best day of my life. And for most people, it would have been the worst.
I think that last statement right there is just so in line with everything I've seen you speak about. I know your book, Severed Dreams, that you mentioned. It's when somebody asks you, that would you wish you would have taken those red flags or those signs, because then this would have never happened. I think the alternative is then this would have never happened, right? Like this, as in the I don't know, tens of thousands of people that you've impacted with your story, that probably and hopefully have given hope to, given support to, that may have chosen something terrible in their own life. That would have never happened. And that's what I've gotten from the way that you share your story. So I think that's just a really interesting way to look at what might be perceived as a negative thing in our life may have opened a door that you never even knew existed.
No question about it. And I'm not saying don't pay attention to red flags and
Right.
those things as well. Don't just go live willy-nilly and say, hey, whatever's going to happen. And that's okay too sometimes. But yes, sometimes we have to listen to our gut and follow our things. But as long as you're making it, and I've talked with a lot of people about this, that regret so much things, like regret marriages, or regret financial decisions, or regret decisions they made on jobs or whatever it may be. But man, the longer we stay in the past on those things and worrying about what would have happened if, we're just wasting our life, because
Right.
we can't do anything but learn and grow. And hopefully we did that when things didn't go our way.
So I'm going to take you back to you mentioned that this boat decides to go in reverse. I'm going to blame it on the boat directly.
Sure.
And you happen to be the only thing stopping it from continuing to going. And so I don't know how much you can put yourself back in that moment, or how much you've had to kind of collect from witnesses of the event. But from there has to be, I'm assuming, a traumatic scene. And I know eventually there's a medevac, I think, that has to come get in. It seemed like a whole story ensued in that part of the problem.
It is crazy. It is. What I tell people when I speak to them over the phone, when we're trying to decide if I'm the right person for a conference or a talk or a company, and we sit down and we kind of go through, the story a little bit, and it's one of those that it is hard to believe that it's funny. It's hard to believe that they'll laugh till their stomachs hurt hearing it, but there are just some crazy, crazy, amazing things that happen, and God felt moments as well, that just happened to really be there when I needed them the most. And yeah, all of this destroyed. I mean, the right leg was broken in 6 places, artery severed, nerve severed, muscle shredded into, I have no idea how it was still together. And then you've got the other leg clean cut off, can't find it, lost in the lake, gone. Yeah. So this is how I found out, laying on the dock. Someone said we need to get a mask and snorkel. because we can't find the foot. And that's the first time I'd realized, because I saw the other leg, I saw the breaks, I knew it was bad, but I had also had breaks and I've had surgery. So I was literally okay until I heard that they couldn't find a foot. And so I had no reason to understand that. Never seen anyone with one leg, never met anyone with one leg. No idea what that even means for my life, but I know I don't want any part of it. And I literally went from trying to control the situation to someone just take me out, knock me out. Maybe I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. Thank God nobody took medical advice from me. You know, me being awake was just keeping me alive. But yeah, went to first hospital, total chaos, not ready for me. Called Duke University to send a helicopter to come and pick me up. Total chaos there as well. They were actually supposed to come to the lake, couldn't land at the lake because the storms were so bad. This tells you, when we talked about that gut feeling, sometimes we have to listen to it. The pilot and the nurse were told by Duke, bring the helicopter back. We don't have time to get him. They'll just have to take care of him. And had they done that, I would not be having this podcast. I would not have lived past that afternoon. Because when she got to finally decided to wait around for 30, 40 minutes in the air to come and find out where I was at, because she just refused to leave. My vital signs, she told me she's never seen anyone with my vital signs that ever survived. Not one person. And she didn't tell me that till 30 years later after reading my book, and that wasn't in there. And I was upset that wasn't in there, because that's an amazing story.
A good subtitle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I may have to change the cover of the book, take Dabo Sweeney's quote off and put that on there. But, yeah, it was one of those crazy moments where God just said, hey, listen, don't go, please stick around. Because she told me, your situation, she never thought that we would ever get the helicopter, ever get the flight to Duke, never make it, because the situation was so bad. And even got me out to the helicopter and couldn't get me on the helicopter. I wouldn't fit, to the point where they were like, we're going to strap you down, flip you upside down. Maybe it'll work. And saw her a year later. She said, do you know what we went through? Do you remember the whole process? And I said, yeah, it was nuts getting on the helicopter. And she looked at me and she said, you looked at me and told me that, don't worry, if I fell off your stretcher, that I wouldn't run away. And so, I guess losing blood makes you hilarious. I'm not really sure, but it was a crazy time, and a lot of people with amazing intentions and amazing heart that really helped me through, from doctors to my parents to my family to friends. Man, there's no way I could have done it without everyone along the way.
Where were your parents were they at the lake when this happened, or?
This was the only ski show or only athletic event my parents had ever missed in my entire life. Another maybe God moment that they weren't there for it, but they did get the phone call an hour and a half away, and had to drive with no cell phones in the car in 1991. And can't imagine what it felt like to drive an hour and a half to try to find a hospital that you don't really even know where it's at. You don't have GPS. You're just trying to get there. And then the second you get there, you see your son being flown through the emergency room. And another thing that was a God moment, I should not have gone through the middle of the emergency room to get to the helicopter, but they did. And my parents ran in at the same time and had 5 seconds with me. Then they were pushed aside and said, get back in the car, drive to Duke. That's where he's going. First aid even heard. We try to control our lives. I know we don't like to think that we're controlling, but we are very controlling human beings. We like what we like. When we don't get what we want, we don't like it. And we can't control a situation, especially for our loved ones. It is very, very difficult. And to be able to be pushed away and said, there's nothing you can do. We'll see you at Duke when he gets there. I just can't even imagine, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I'm thinking about my mother. She got a phone call an hour and a half away without cell phone and, easy Google Maps to figure out where they're going. Just the emotion and the trauma. I can't imagine.
No, I can't either. Yeah, and even got pulled over by a state trooper. My dad was like, just give me a ticket. Let's go. We got to go. They were like, nah, just go. So thank God that they were safe enough to get there and make it. But yeah, I as a parent myself, man, only thing you want to do is protect. And you can't always, you can't do it all. You try to protect them from everything. But man, when those moments happen, it is debilitating. It's just tough for sure.
So you said you had some humor when you're on the helicopter, right? And you wonder how much of that is just teenage, like, I only care about today, kind of their humor, or how much of that is coping. But But I know you talked about this too, and I think I had a quote similar to this, but it said, putting on a mask, attempting to fool everyone that you're okay. And when you talked about this, when I saw you speak at the event, really hit home with me, because I have a really neat opportunity, and my colleagues to go. We speak all the time at conferences, and we're up on stage, and sometimes it's a bad day, and you still got to go up on stage, and you still got to present, and people don't know what's going on internally, but you got to put this out there. And so when you were speaking about the craziness that you went through, I got to imagine you probably had, friends, you probably had family, coaches, people from the community come check on you and talk to you. And can you remember what that emotion was like of trying to balance, like, being your genuine self of not okay, but wanting to put on a face for everybody else?
Yeah, I was so amazingly good at it that everyone thought I was Superman. Everyone thought that I could handle anything because I was laughing and making jokes. And yeah, there were painful days, but it was always me just trying to make everyone else okay. It's probably a fault in my life. And just to be honest with you, that I have that I want to make everyone else okay. And if that's at the expense of me, then that's at the expense of me. And that is not always the healthiest way of doing things. But I wore my mask so well, even as a 15-year-old kid, because I didn't want to worry my parents. I didn't want to worry my friends, the driver of the boat. I didn't want to stress anyone out. I was going to be okay. I was going to be fine. But the more I wore this mask and the more I just act like nothing was happening, I wasn't dealing with anything. I wasn't, taking on my issues. And also that, I was never alone. I had tons of people coming to the hospital, always staying the night with me, always volunteering to be there, never, ever alone. And so when you're always wearing your mask for everyone else and you're never alone, you don't ever have a chance to cope. You don't ever have a chance to try to self-evaluate, heal. You're just busy. You're busy putting up a front. And I get the front, man. I still do it today sometimes. I do it in front of my parents. I do it in front of my kids. I do it in front of my friends sometimes, my coworkers, whatever. When things aren't great, I don't necessarily want anybody to know anything about it. And so I put a smile on my face and everyone thinks, gosh, everything's great. Yeah, I mean, it's when you're over posting on social media and everything is wonderful in your life, that's probably the time that things aren't so great and we're just trying to mask it with everything else. And I understand it. But it has never been a solution to anything in our lives to fake and just to ignore and just to hope it goes away. We got to deal with our stuff. And I didn't know that. And it drove me almost to the point of too much pressure and wanting to take my life because I didn't want to fail anybody and I didn't want to worry anybody. And, so.
It's vulnerable, obviously, for you and powerful for you to share that and to help give strength to other people going through things like that. Were there moments or a moment where maybe you came to the realization of, like, well, my future is going to be different than it was yesterday? Like, am I going to be able to walk again? Can I play basketball again? Like, was that a progressive kind of evolution, or was there a moment where that really hit you?
Yeah, there was, I definitely think there was a progression of questions, but being so masked up and wanting to just be positive, I didn't listen to anything that was negative. You were not allowed to cry in my room. You had to leave. You were not allowed to get upset. You had to leave the room. And I know that was happening a lot. I get it. And I understand as a parent now, Jesus, I cry more than anybody does. I mean, I am very emotional when it comes to my kids and my family, and I want everything to be okay. And so it is difficult, but about 3.5 weeks in, the physical therapist brings this videotape by saying, hey, we're going to inspire you. We want to fire you up, show you what life's going to be like. And it was a videotape of amputees playing basketball. And I couldn't even believe what I was getting ready to see, or even that was possible. Because like I said, I'd never seen anyone with one leg. They weren't on the basketball courts balling it up. They're not running the Olympics at that point in time. They're walking on wooden almost legs and barely getting around. So to watch this video, I was so excited. I put this video in, and 15 seconds into it, I wish I hadn't seen it. In the South, we say, bless your heart when things aren't really that great. That kid he's a special kid, bless his heart. That's not a compliment, but bless their hearts. They barely ran. They barely jumped. They look like one-legged people trying to play basketball. And I knew this had to be the best of the best. Why would they videotape them? Why would they show them off? If this is as good as you'll ever be, and they wouldn't be competitive against an elementary school team. And I had big dreams. I was going to play college football, play pro football. I had all of these dreams, and it wasn't even just about that. It's just about being active in my life. And I just saw my life as, this is never going to happen now. That video just opened my eyes to, this is as good as your life will ever be. If you're even this good, these guys got one leg, you got one, and then this other one that's all destroyed and doesn't even function half away. And you'll never be able to do anything. And that was the night that no one was signed up to stay with me that night in my hospital room. And that was the same night I watched that video, and it was the worst day of my life because I thought I was just giving up, and I just gave up. And I was never taught to ever give up in my life, but I was giving up fast.
Where'd you find that? Because you didn't give up, thankfully. And
No kidding.
where did you find the courage to go through the rehab and the physical therapy and the surgeries? And where did you find that courage to get to where you're at now?
Well, it's not something that just comes out of nowhere, unfortunately. I wish that it could be, and it can to some extent, but I was raised in the church. I was raised with my parents pouring into me. And, I've always been told, God will never forsake you. He will not give you more than you can handle. And I've known that my whole life and been told that. And you've been told by my dad, you don't ever quit. You just keep moving, keep going forward. Don't worry about what just happened. It probably was a little bit more redneck, throw dirt on it, get your butt off, walk it off. That's, what we do. But it's a sign for life. Things are not going to go your way, and things are going to go wrong, and things are not going to be good. But what now? What do you do? How do you respond? How do you react to it? Do you take it on? Do you take the challenge? Do you learn from it? Do you grow from it? And for me, that was kind of what happened as I laid in the bed that night screaming, why me? I asked over and over and over, and I heard as clearly as I'm speaking to you, don't worry, you'll find out. And I know it was God just speaking to me, just giving me just enough, not the answers, not everything I want to hear. And I think that's what we want sometimes. We want someone to just give us everything. This is why, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen after that. Then this is what your life is going to look like, and this is what it's going to be. That's not what this is. It is that faith and hope that wakes you up in the morning. It doesn't take much. It does. So for me to think, hey, maybe something good is going to come out of this. Maybe. I don't think so, but maybe. I'll never know unless I just go full blast and try to find out. And so that's how I try to take on rehab and walking and learning how to walk again, and then going to learn how to jog and play basketball and do whatever else that I did. I just decided no one was going to tell me what I could and couldn't do. I was going to figure it out. And no one was going to tell me this is probably as far as you can go. I was going to find out. And that took a lot of bumps. That took a lot of pain. That took a lot of back in the hospital for boils and blisters and all kinds of things. But you will never know what your life is going to turn out unless you give it all the effort that you have to give. And that doesn't mean that you can give 100% to everything in your life. It means you have too much in your life that you're trying to give so much to. And it might be that you need to cut things out that aren't quite as important sometimes so that you can have time to give to the things that mean the most. And yeah, that was a little soapbox. Sorry about that.
That's an incredible journey, though. When you're going through that, I would imagine probably right after the accident, through the rehab, and we get questions like this all the time from our listeners of people that are talking to other people who've experienced horrific events in their life, maybe the loss of a loved one or whatever it might be. And the natural thing to want to say is, hey, I understand what you're going through. I understand. And you're shaking your head no already. And that's what I want to ask you is that's so natural for somebody to say, but in your position, you're like, you don't have any damn clue what I'm going through. So how do you relate to that, or how do you explain that to people?
The best explanation I can give you is I used to be a physical therapist in another life after college. And I worked with amputees. I worked with people who had strokes. I worked with a little bit of everything. And I used to have some patients, but sometimes, therapists say, I bet you can get your patients to do anything you want. Just show them your leg and say, if I can do it, you can do it. God, I bet you can get them to do anything. And I said, you know what? I've never once told a patient or told them about my situation unless they just happen to ask. Because I could sit there and say all day long, you have no idea what I went through. If I can get through it, then you can get through it. I will never, ever mutter those words to anybody in my life, even if it is the truth. Maybe it is a situation where I know that they can get through it because I know that what I went through was so tough, and I know that they can get through it. It's very similar. They're similar, but that is never going to come out of my mouth because it is such unfair because you have no idea what their history is, how they deal with issues, how they deal with their trust in whatever else is going on in their life, and all the things that they've had to deal with. And that maybe a broken arm may be so devastating to someone, or a breakup, or something, losing a loved one. You cannot walk in someone else's shoes. What I do tell people is, I've been through hard things. I can't imagine what you're going through, but I know it's hard because you feel it's hard. If it feels hard, it is hard. It doesn't matter if you look at mine and say it's not halfway as hard as what you dealt with. It's horse crap. It's not what life is about. We all deal with things in all different levels and all different capabilities and coping mechanisms that you can't ever put yourself in someone else's shoes. But it's okay to say, hey, listen, I know you're going through a hard thing right now. I know this is very difficult for you. I've been through hard things too. I'm not saying I understand exactly what you're going through, but I can help, and I'm here to listen, and I'm here to be whatever it is that you need me to be. But yeah, we should never say somebody, if I can do it, then you can do it. Right. And I heard a lot of that when I was in the hospital, and it didn't resonate very well with me.
What did resonate, right? If you're in that position, what was it, the one thing that maybe did give you that hope or support? What can people do for somebody like in that situation?
Treated me like everyone else. Just treated me like a normal person. Talked to me like a normal person. I didn't want them to cry over me, to weep over me, to be overly nice because they felt like, I needed it or I deserve it. I just wanted people to be real with me. Just be like nothing else has ever gone on, and I work with kids with disabilities and wheelchairs, and I've done that my whole life. That's what I got from my mom. One of the things, she was a special ed teacher, and I got to be that. And so in my adult life, really worked with some organizations that work with people in wheelchairs. We used to play baseball with them. We built this miracle field. And man, if I knew that a girl walking down first base was going slower than she can, I would take the ball and I would throw it and I'd hit her in the rear end and say, come on, I know you can go faster than that. And people in the stands would have heart attacks watching someone hit someone with a disability and say, come on, you can go faster than that. You can, and they'd look at me and they smile. They knew they were going slow. They knew they weren't doing all that. And so you just treat people just like it's so funny watching people go up to kids in wheelchairs. Hi, how are you doing? And the kid's sitting there going, I'm 30 years old. I'm fine. I'm good, and so even ones who are nonverbal, those, just treat people like you want to be treated and don't treat them like anything's gone wrong. That was helpful for me at that time, because the less I had to think about things being weird and different, then the more I could just be a kid and just do things that I wanted to do. So,
well, and you shared a story when I saw you speak last time, that showed still how much fun you were having, even though you were struggling with the rehab and the physical therapy. And you were sharing a story about when you were playing basketball again, and you had some fun choices of what type of prosthetic you were wearing, but I'll let you kind of explain the fun you had with
it. So really, when all this happened to me, I was very self-conscious, super self-conscious. I wanted a leg to look like a real leg. I wanted to feel like, today I've got this leg that I wear today. I'll give you a little shot of it, but it's a black leg. It's, obviously, it's not a real leg.
Right.
Just no question about it when you see it. But back then I wore a leg, looked like a real leg. I wanted to hide it. I wanted no one to know. I wanted it to be, but even with shorts on, you could tell the skin wasn't exactly the same color. You didn't have hair on one of your legs. It just wasn't exactly, but they were shaped identical. And so when I would cover them up with socks, yeah, they looked identical to each other. And I wore a knee brace, so you couldn't tell. You had no idea. Then I was playing in a game my senior year, and I jumped up for a rebound really high, grabbed the rebound, came back down and landed, threw it out for a fast break, and I fell to the ground. No big deal. That happens. Got back up, fell again, could not move, realized what had been promised to me could never happen, has never happened, and will never happen. You cannot break your prosthesis, made of, carbon fiber and graphite, and it's so strong, and, no worries. And this thing was snapped into, but you can't see anything because it's got skin and foam, and it's got tube socks covering it up. So I just started hopping off the court, going to the bench, knew I couldn't play anymore. Now everybody's paying attention to the goofy white boy who's got tall socks. It looks like an idiot. And then the atmosphere changes. People start gagging and running out of the gym. It's total craziness. And I look back and this leg is just flopping and foot's turning circles and it's bending in places the legs aren't supposed to bend, right mid-shin. It looked like Paul George with no blood, just hanging and dangling. And I'm trying to hop to the bench and people are gagging, trying to get me to lay down. And I'm just like, get away from me. I'm okay. They thought I was Superman. I sat on the bench the whole game with the rest of the game with the leg in the wrong direction. And the other kids running up and down the court from the other team. My team thought it was hilarious, because everyone else was overreacting, and they had no idea still to the end of the game that wasn't a real leg. And they were very concerned why we had not gone to the ambulance and to the hospital at that point. But yeah,
did you win the game?
Stories, man, my book is just full of them. It's it's crazy stuff for sure. But it's fun. You gotta have fun with life, no matter what happens.
Did your team win the game?
We won by a lot. Yeah, they could not do anything. And my teammates were like, hey, let's do this next week. I'm like, I would like to play. And this is too expensive to keep breaking. So we're not doing that.
So I know I'm skipping a lot of time in your life, but what you're doing now was really, I guess, born out of this incident that is tragedy that occurred to you. And you're out there inspiring people. You're speaking at businesses and corporate events. You're speaking for teams. I mentioned the Bills before. I know you mentioned Dave Sweeney earlier, and you got your book. And so what was the pivot point where you realized, hey, I've got a story to tell and a message to help support people?
Yeah, I mean, I felt my story and that I can help came out my senior year in high school. I spoke at my church for the very first time ever sharing my story from my mouth, besides just in conversations alone, but kind of gave my testimony, everything that had happened. And that was the first time that, people coming up to me, attorneys, doctors, lawyers, I'm a 15-year-old kid, or excuse me, a 18-year-old kid. And they're like, gosh, your story meant so much to me. It changed the way I look at things. And I'm like, really? Like, it's just what happened. Like, I didn't think anything was that special. I really honestly didn't. And I just wanted to be a kid, live my life. I never saw my life as something that grand and that special. I mean, you'd get told things, but I was just interested in being a kid. So, so speaking it resonated. So I did a little bit in high school, and then college came. I just want to be a college kid, and I just enjoyed college. I loved it, did all those things, and got a job and started becoming, an adult with kids. And then I started speaking a little bit more. And then I just literally, like, schools would call me and say, hey, come speak to the kids. And that's kind of where things started for me. And I just enjoyed it. I never took any money, and then people wanted to pay me, and I just never was comfortable. It was just supposed to be what I did. This is just what you do. You give back when things happen to you. You just give back. You don't charge money. And for literally 20 years, I spoke and never took a dime for anything. And so I just started deciding to build a website, and I started going, did 35 events my first year. I was working another full-time job. And then it got to the point where I was excited about nothing else but the event weeks and going places and traveling all over the country. And then the next year I did 60 events, and that's where it stayed, for the last 10 years, between 40 and 60 events a year all over the country, from 20,000 people to 10 10 people in a conference room. It's been a little bit of everything in every genre, blue collar, white collar, everything in the world. But it's just been a blessing to me to, one, be able to share the story, and one, having it be so entertaining to a point where people just enjoy listening to it and want to hear more. And I can't ask for more than that, man. It's just a blessing. I feel guilty often that I make a living doing what I do, and I see people working what I feel like so much harder than I do. And I'm just so eternally blessed. And I want to give that every single time I step on stage. I want to change someone's life if it's possible. I'm going to try my hardest, and it lands a lot, but it's always fun. And we always have a good time with it.
Well, you do such a great job of delivering the message that I imagine when you're speaking, you got people laughing, you got people crying, and every emotion in between. Are there any moments, and I'm sure there's a ton of these, but that come to mind where you felt like you really had a particular impact on somebody or some group in the time of doing this?
Yeah, two quick stories. One, I was speaking at a big, huge FCA event, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. It was out on a football field, tons of students, all of this stuff. And we did a call, and, I had just envisioned this in my head, that hundreds of kids would just come and, after hearing my message, just give their life, all of this. And there was a couple hundred kids, and one kid walked down those stands, and my ego was crushed. And I know that sounds so horrible that I would ever have an ego about anything, but you want to make the biggest impact all the time that you can. If I could change hundreds of thousands of lives. It would just be amazing. But I got reminded that night, I said, it's about the one. It's the one person that you can change. It's the one person's life that may alter because of you. And it really brought me down. And that night meant a huge amount to me. The other one, I'll just tell you, I do this exercise sometimes where I have people text, not group text, but text individuals, and I have them send a little message, tell them that they're thinking about them, that they love them, that they care about them. Sorry that it's been so long since I reached out, or whatever the situation may be. We'll have them write this message, and they just send it out to people that they haven't talked to in a while, or people that they have bad relationships with, and it's life-changing. And for this one lady, she was 50 some years old, got visibly upset during the talk. Talked to her afterwards. She came up to me. I said, did you send a text message out? And she said, yeah. I said, who? She said, my mom. And I was like, oh, okay. I was kind of scared to ask, what's the story? What's going on? And she said, I haven't spoken to my mom since I was 19 years old. And it's not been good. And so I sent her the text message, told her that I loved her and that I missed her and that I appreciate her. And she's so afraid to ask, did she respond? And she said, yeah. She said she loved me, and she can't believe what's happened has happened over the decades, but they literally were getting lunch like the next week. They set it up to an appointment to make a call and have lunch. And so it doesn't take much. And I know it didn't take much for people to inspire me and to give me life and to give me some hope that if I could just sprinkle a smidge of that around for what was done to me, man, this whole life is worth it. This traveling, this time away from kids when I go in and I'm spending time on the road doing things, but hopefully they know Dad's doing a good thing. So
yeah, it's incredible. One message can change a relationship, or at least redirect a relationship. Is pretty powerful.
Yeah. Just a little bit of care and love sometimes.
Yeah. Throughout this entire time, maybe something still today, but is there anything that you found that was maybe like a habit or a routine that you got into just to kind of keep your own mental health and positivity on track?
Yeah, man, I struggle with it today, man. I got things in my life going on, and it's a struggle, and I'm trying to keep myself positive. But more than anything, if I can help to pour into someone, especially that's dealing with struggle or whatever it may be, is control the things that you can control. That is A1, number one. The things we think about, the things we do, the effort that we put in, those are things that we can control. Being grateful are things that we can control. And some of those habits is people said it's impossible to be down when you're grateful. And I think there's some truth to that. I think it's really hard to be grateful when things are in the shitter and things aren't going well and things are a big struggle. It's hard to remember all the good things, but I literally have people write them down and put them in their bathroom or by their nightstand and just read them. Read things that you love about yourself, read things that you're grateful for. And just like the negative things that people say, and they say things over and over and over again to you, you start to believe them, whether they're true or not. You're a terrible person, you're this, you're that, you start to believe lies, and we lie to ourselves a lot. So if we can become grateful and start to tell ourselves more positive things, then we'll start to believe those as well. I truly do believe it. But we have a choice to list our things we're grateful for. And I think it makes a huge difference to me. And also just take a snapshot of my life. Where am I at? Why can't I be happy? Why can't I have happy? Why can't I? This is my life to live. This is my choice. I cannot let this and that determine my happiness anymore. I need to live, and this is my life to live. And I choose to do it givingly. I choose to live my life serving and giving to others, and that's my love language. I'm a giver, and not everybody is like that, and not everybody likes to receive it as well. But that's Sorry, I went out off.
No, that's powerful. That's well, and I was just thinking as you're saying that to kind of wrap us up here. I could ask you a million different questions, and you got so many takeaways. And I recommend people to go onto your website. I know you got some neat videos there that kind of highlight some of your story and your message. And I'd recommend people get the book as well, because I know it dives in detail into some stories we haven't even touched on here. But I'm curious about if one day you're speaking in front of professional athletes. I mentioned the Buffalo Bills earlier. So you've got a world-class athlete like Josh Allen sitting there. You've got Brandon Bean, an incredible GM and a business person, a football maniac. But then the next week you're speaking at a corporate event and you're speaking in front of a bunch of salespeople or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, I feel like your message is still the same. But I'm sure you go through this, like you're customizing the message. But at the end of the day, what is the one thing that you hope if somebody didn't listen to you for a 60-minute talk or a 3-hour talk and they got one takeaway, what would that one takeaway be?
Man, that is a great question. And yeah, every single thing that I do, I try to customize. I try to make it relevant for the group. I try to spend time finding out what their struggles are, what the things that they're dealing with the most. And, this was a time in like Buffalo's, time where they were rebuilding and they were making a lot of changes and McDermott and Bean had just gotten there. So there was a whole lot of new things that were going on. And those kind of things are scary and intimidating. So their message was about coming together. Their message was about teamwork. Their message was about working as a unit and being able to be prepared for when those things go wrong, not expect them, not wait for them, not sit on the edge saying, oh, it's coming, but being mentally prepared enough to know that things will happen and you're going to need to be prepared for them. You're going to need to have those tools and have those people and have those resources there for you when things do go bad. And that might be a pastor, it might be a friend, it might be a child, it might be textbooks, it might be just a accountability partner, but it's tough to go through this life alone. And I tell people all the time, man, every single person that is dealing with something. And these people that you think have everything in the world going well for them and everything amazing, everybody is dealing and everybody is struggling. So treat people like they're struggling. Treat people like there's something major in their life. Just be kind and just reach out and let people know that you're there for them, you care for them, you're with them. If there's anything they can do ever to support you, I'm here. I'll do whatever I can to make your life better. And I think that's carried from business to business. Like cancers can spread so easily, like negativity and rumoring and talking junk about people in office settings. It spreads so quickly and micromanagement starts giving and loving and taking care of people and supporting people like we all need it. It spreads quickly too. And I've seen it change a lot of groups and a lot of businesses and say what you want to say to people. Don't hide your feelings anymore. Don't say the things you need to say because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Let those people know that you care for them and don't be afraid to show emotion. Don't be afraid to be real and be vulnerable. And I think as a leader, being vulnerable with people and letting them know, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to know every answer. But I swear to God, I will do everything in my power to make you successful and to get you where you need to go. And if that means that I can't answer the question, I'll find somebody that can help. And I think those things are they're universal. Doesn't matter who they are.
Yeah, that's a powerful takeaway. If people want to learn more about you and your story, I know I mentioned the book, but what's the best way to connect with you after they listen to the episode?
Sure. My website is just always the greatest, I think. It's chadporter.org. And my book is on Amazon, Severed Dreams. And so, yeah, they're great resources. And my cell phone is on my website. My email, you can call me if you need anything or have a group or a message or just want to tell me your story. I love to hear things. I get messages all the time on social media that something helped or something worked. And it's encouraging to me just to keep doing what I'm doing. Not that I feel like I'll ever get tired of it, but it keeps my fire going, knowing when things make a difference. And that's not why I do it, but it's nice to hear sometimes too.
Oh yeah. Well, you're definitely making a difference and we appreciate you spending time with us. And as you were just talking, I have to mention this with the Bills too. We had Don Beebe on our first season, one of our episodes, and
very cool.
Another just incredible, inspirational guy. But he kind of spoke about the resiliency of a team that, not clearly not comparing to what you went through, but this kind of foundational concept of going to a Super Bowl and losing every 4 years in a row, but coming back as a unit and getting back to the gym the next day and just picking up where you needed to pick up. And it connected those dots for me there.
It's so hard to start over, man. And a lot of people have jobs or a lot of people have careers or they have home situations where it's like, what have you done for me lately? Like all the stuff in the past, it's done. Go now, and what can we do now? And we lick our wounds for a minute, and that's okay. It's okay to feel all the things you want to feel, but get back on the damn horse and keep on going, because otherwise you're going to get stuck, and it's not going to create a life that you'll ever want.
It's perfect. I appreciate you spending time with us and everything you're doing every week to inspire others. So keep doing good work. ChadPorter.org, and we'll include that link in the show notes too for those of you listening, so you can click and learn a little bit more about Chad. But thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate it, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.
To help more listeners find our show, please provide us a rating, give us a follow, and share this episode with your colleagues. For the latest news and to engage with our guests, follow Truth Be Told on your favorite social media apps. And don't forget, we are available on all major platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and watch a video of this episode on YouTube. On behalf of our guests and valued sponsors, thanks again for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.